I'm back talking about the James Bond movies, the official 007 movies leading up to No Time to Die in April. We are halfway through. This is number 13, and that is 1983's Octopussy. Yeah, there's actually a movie called Octopussy. Don't be too alarmed out there. There's actually a movie called Octopussy, and it might be as cheesy as you think it is. It might not be. Octopussy once again stars Roger Moore in his 6th go-around as James Bond. Yes, he is getting a bit old, but this is his 6th time. He decided to come back and portray Bond again in Octopussy. This adventure takes Bond to India, where after the death of a fellow 00 agent, 009, Bond must investigate that death, and his investigation leads him to a jewel smuggling ring led by Kamal Khan. Kamal Khan is secretly in cahoots with a corrupt Russian general, General Orlov. General Orlov's big plan is to fund Kamal Khan with these jewels that are stolen from the Kremlin in exchange for Kamal Khan's help to help General Orlov create disarmament in Western Europe. That way they can arm an atomic bomb and blow it up in a US Air Force base and make it look like it was an accident by the United States. Yeah, so I think a lot of people really associate Octopussy with being like the one Bond film they won't watch because of the name Octopussy. Yeah, it's an outrageous title. It's probably the worst title for a Bond film next to Quantum of Solace. But I gotta be completely honest with you. Octopussy is really middle-of-the-pack Roger Moore films and actually middle-of-the-pack Bond films when I think about it. This is just below Thunderball in terms of entertainment, right above Quantum of Solace. So yeah, middle of the pack in terms of Bond films. In terms of Roger Moore Bond films, there's 3 Bond films from Roger Moore's era that I think are better. Obviously, I think The Spy Who Loved Me is the best. I think The Man with the Golden Gun is my personal favorite. Personally, I think that's Roger Moore's 2nd best, even though it's my favorite, there's a difference between best and favorite. And then A View to a Kill, and that's giving away my stance on my next review of View to a Kill, because I actually really do like A View to a Kill. It's in my top 10 for Bond films. I know. People consider it bottom of the barrel Bond. I really don't. Right below that is Octopussy, and then probably For Your Eyes Only, Live and Let Die, and Moonraker. Bottom of the barrel. I would rather watch The Spy Who Loved Me, The Man with the Golden Gun, or A View to a Kill over Octopussy, but I always have a lot of fun watching Octopussy, despite quite a bit of problems I do have with Octopussy. First of all, I love the action in this movie. This movie is just all camp. I love how campy the action is in this movie. That car chase in India is one of the most campy things I've ever seen, but the movie really owns its campiness. And I think that that's actually a big attribute to A View to a Kill, and I'll talk about that more when I get to A View to a Kill. But the campy tone of the action sequences, actually really works in this movie for me. I think it makes for some unique action sequences. Again, that car chase through the streets of India, there's just some stuff in there that I love. Like this line that Bond says.
Well, thank God for hard currency.
Or stuff like this. There's just so many things about that are great, and another thing I really like about Octopussy is that it takes place mostly in one location, and that is India. We're not on a globe-trotting adventure here, it's mostly just India. We go to Germany at the end of the movie, and then we come back to India, but it really, for a majority of this movie, Bond's adventure and his investigation takes place in India, and that's something I really like. It's a more contained Bond film, taking place in one location rather than jumping across the globe to these different locations. Sure, it is great to see locations like Altasea and Spectre, or the Byllamore Dam in GoldenEye, or Fort Knox in Kentucky and Goldfinger, like locations like that, and when we bounce around like that, it's all cool and dandy and all to see where Bond's gonna go on his adventure, but I think it works for this movie being a more self-contained caper. Bond has never been to India before, so you might as well make him spend as much time in the country as you can. And where Kamal Khan and General Orlov have this jewel smuggling heist going on. What better place than the locales of India? I think it's a very lush location, a very lush environment for Bond to be a part of, and it just makes all the sense in the world. So why the hell not? Kamal Khan is also one of my favorite Bond villains. Even though this is middle of the pack Roger Moore and middle of the pack Bond films for me, I've always really admired Kamal Khan, that he's kind of doing two things at once here in this movie, and I'll get into more of that in a minute. But he's a very complex villain when you think about it. And enlisting the help of Octopussy to help him smuggle these jewels, enlisting the help of General Orlov. The dude's smart. And that backgammon scene with Bond is one of the most intense things I have ever seen in a Bond film. Next to the Texas Hold'em game in Casino Royale. That is intense, guys. Every time Bond interacts with Kamal Khan, you expect something to go down. Kamal Khan just looks like that intimidating guy at a party that you don't want to approach. That's Kamal Khan. That's Kamal Khan. Every time he's on screen, I just kind of get the goosebumps, because he always just has that presence that he's just going to do something evil. And his henchman, Gobinda, is amazing. I've talked about my fair share of henchmen within the Bond series so far, but two of my favorite henchmen ever are the knife-throwing Mishka and Grishka, the twins. They're awesome. They throw knives, they kill 009, very minimal dialogue, so intimidating, yet so menacing. I also like how Bond has to meet a new contact in this movie. Rather than contacting Felix Leiter, he meets a new contact in India, and that is Vijay. Vijay is alright. I won't say he's the best part of the movie or one of the strengths of the movie, but he's a serviceable character, and I do actually feel something when Vijay does get killed later on in the movie, because there was an actual bond there with Bond, no pun intended. He actually kind of had this camaraderie with Bond, this friendship with Bond. It actually seemed like they could be tangible in the field together when they were working together, and that's why it kind of makes Vijay's death all that more emotional, I will say. The best part of this movie for me, though, is Steven Berkoff as General Orlov. Man, does this guy own his over-the-topness. Like I said, this movie is campy. It's over the top. And Steven Berkoff as General Orlov is no different. I love General Orlov. Everything he says is with emphasis, and it's amazing.
I have 31 divisions, including 11 tank divisions and another 5 in Czechoslovakia. In support, on the Russian western border are 60 divisions, including 22 tank divisions. In all, a 10-to-1 advantage. American and West German forces can field at most 10 armored divisions.
I've got tanks stationed here, and here, and here, and Slovakia, and Russia, and everything else. This guy's amazing. I love this guy. I love how he's the ultimate bad guy. There's nothing else to him. He's just the bad guy. You know it right away, too. That's kind of my issue with some Bond villains, is that right away you kind of know their plan. But if you can own it like Steven Berkoff does when he's playing General Orlov, go for it. Just go for it. It's great. I love General Orlov. He's also one of my favorite villains. Probably my favorite main villain. And that's the thing about this movie. This has two main villains. General Orlov and Kamal Khan. And they work together. It's great. It's great. It's a great new dynamic for a Bond film. We haven't seen that to this point yet in a Bond film. We've seen two henchmen work together, Mishka and Grishka in this film. I mean, Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint in Diamonds Are Forever, but we don't talk about them because Diamonds Are Forever doesn't exist in my mind. It's not until later on when we get to The World's Not Enough that we're actually going to have two villains again. And that movie just brings up the argument as to which one is actually the main villain. But I love how this movie has two main villains. And for the earlier Sean Connery ones, you could even make the case that Ernst Stavro Blofeld is the main villain in those, and he's just sending his various cronies to carry out his master plan. But when you really think about it, he's kind of the Palpatine guy. He's behind the scenes, and then everybody like Rosa Klebb, Amelia Largo, Dr. No, they're all at the front lines of Blofeld's plan. So Blofeld's just kind of in the shadows until he reveals himself in You Only Live Twice. This is why I like Octopussy more than I think a lot of people do. I really don't think a lot of people understand that this was the first Bond film to have two villains, and they work in tandem together, and they work well together, and Steven Berkoff is just great as Orlov. He's over the top and insane, and it's awesome. As far as issues with Octopussy, Definitely Roger Moore. I won't say his performance, but his age. And I'm going to bring this up again in A View to a Kill. I believe I brought it up in For Your Eyes Only, because in For Your Eyes Only I mentioned that there was like an 18-year-old trying to bang Bond in that movie, and he is far too old. I think Roger Moore is still pretty old to play Bond in this movie. Luckily, the couple of Bond girls that they cast, Maud Adams as Octopussy, and I'm not sure of the actress's name that plays Magda, but at least they at least look closer in age to Roger Moore, because he was 55 when this movie was made and when it was released. But I still think he is a bit too old for the part, and you can kind of tell in the action sequences and in the fight scenes where he has to get a little physical. You can definitely tell he's starting to age a little bit. This movie also brought back a former actor or actress from a previous Bond film, and that is Maud Adams. And this time she plays Octopussy. She no longer plays Scaramanga's henchman, Andrea Anders, because Andrea Anders died in The Man with the Golden Gun. But for some reason, the producers decided to bring Maud Adams back. Nothing against Maud Adams, and at least they decided to bring her back for a different character instead of resurrecting Andrea Anders from the dead. But it's just a bit distracting. It's like the Charles Gray situation in You Only Live Twice, and then he's absent for a film, and then he comes back in Diamonds Are Forever as the main villain. It doesn't really work. It's too distracting, and it just takes me out of the movie completely. And again, nothing against Maud Adams. I think she and Roger Moore have great chemistry, and I think that that's a huge reason as to why she was brought back to be in this movie, to play Octopussy. But it's just super distracting. I hate when they bring back actors who played a different character in another film to play a different character in the current film. It just doesn't really make sense to me. It just takes me out of the movie, and it's super distracting. And while the action scenes are a bit campy, there's this one in which Bond is being pursued by an elephant. I don't really get that. Not sure where that came from. If we have to talk about another issue as well, that is, I think this movie is kind of conflicted as to what story it wants to tell, because we have the whole Kamal Khan plotline. He's a jewel smuggler. He's got this jewel smuggling ring in India. Octopussy is a part of that jewel smuggling ring, but she is completely oblivious to the fact that he is in cahoots with General Orlov. Then we have the whole General Orlov storyline. He wants to create disarmament in Western Europe. He wants to take all the troops and supplies out of Western Europe and conquer the Western world, but in order to do that, he's going to detonate a nuclear bomb at a United States Air Force base in Germany to make it look like an accident. The movie really kind of just gets lost into what story it wants to tell. It connects the dots well between Kamal Khan and General Orlov and why they team up. It feels like for most of the movie, we're focusing on this jewel smuggling ring. And then every time it cuts back to General Orlov, it just kind of feels like this tacked on plot. And then the movie ends up focusing on that plot in the last third of the movie. The last 40 minutes of the movie focuses on trying to disarm that bomb. It takes place in Germany. It just feels a bit conflicted and confused and just not sure where it wants to go in terms of its story. It just gets a little lost in the shuffle. I don't think it's convoluted at all. It's just, I think there's a bit too much going on. And this movie is 2 hours and 11 minutes. This is the longest Bond film of the Roger Moore era, tied with A View to a Kill, which is the next one. And you can definitely feel that runtime towards the end, because that action sequence on the train has got to be at least 30 minutes. 20 at the least. 30 at the max, and it definitely feels it. And this is just a nitpick, but what kind of gun does Bond have in this? That's not a Walther PPK. Is that like an updated version of a Walther PPK? I have no idea. That's always something that's really bothered me. That's not even a huge problem. That's just a nitpick. That's just paying attention to detail, I guess. So while there is quite a bit to like about Octopussy, there is quite a bit to dislike, and it's kind of a mixed bag for me, although I do feel as if Octopussy is one of the more underrated films of the Bond series. I would definitely watch this in a heartbeat over a bunch of Bond films, honestly. Just for sheer camp and sheer fun, I have a really fun time watching Octopussy, and it actually had some competition at the box office in 1983, because in 1983, another said film by a man named Kevin McClory, who I have mentioned numerous times on this channel and in this series of reviews, decided to remake Thunderball because he owned the rights for it, and he settled a lawsuit out of court with Ian Fleming after a failed attempt to get a James Bond movie made in the late 50s. He believes that he owned the rights to Spectre, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, and said characters, so he decided to remake the movie Thunderball with Sean Connery as James Bond. Not an official Bond movie, which is why I will not be reviewing Never Say Never Again, but I will say I will never watch Never Say Never Again ever again. That is very confusing. Wow, that is tongue-tying. I'm not going to be reviewing Never Say Never Again. I don't like that movie. It's not an official Bond film. Luckily, Octopussy beat it out at the box office, so we ended up getting more Bond films, and luckily Never Say Never Again had some production troubles because it would have released the same week or a week after Octopussy, and I'm not sure how Octopussy would have fared at the box office because you had the star power of Sean Connery back as James Bond, but it was an unofficial Bond film. So luckily, Octopussy won out, and I think Octopussy is by far the better film than Never Say Never Again. And I'm glad Never Say Never Again was an unofficial Bond film because I dislike that film a lot. Again, not reviewing it, so thank God that's out of the way. But Octopussy is a mixed bag for me. Got a lot going for it. I love General Orlov's over-the-top zaniness. Steven Berkoff's performance is amazing. A lot of the action has that just the right amount of camp that is needed in a Bond film. There's that, although some of it goes a bit too far, that elephant chase sequence. Little too far. I loved how it's a more contained thriller. It takes place in one location. It's got some of the best villains, some of the best henchmen. I think Roger Moore is still really good as Bond, but he is a bit too old. Maud Adams coming back as a different character is a bit distracting, and the movie just doesn't really know where it wants to go with its story in that third act, and as a result, it ends up feeling a bit longer than the movie actually is. And with that, I'm going to give Octopussy a C+. I think a lot of people actually really think Octopussy is one of the worst movies in the Bond series. Give it a try, and I think you'll actually really like it, because I was very reluctant when I first saw this movie to watch it, and then I watched it, I was like, actually kind of dig it. So not my favorite, definitely middle of the pack in terms of Roger Moore movies, in terms of Bond movies, but definitely really like it. Guys, what do you think of Octopussy? Drop me some feedback in the comment section below. I will leave my link to my website in the description below as well. There you will find all my links to my social media accounts. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.